My name is Emily Parker, and I never thought a single weekend could turn my world upside down. I always believed that family was a constant, something unshakable, but I learned the hard way that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you, the ones who should have your back, are the ones who turn away when you need them the most. It all started after my grandmother's funeral. Grandma Ruth, as everyone called her, had been the glue that held our family together. She wasn't just a grandmother, she was our anchor, our quiet source of wisdom and warmth. I loved her more than I can ever put into words, and she knew it. That's why, a few months before she passed, she called me into her small study filled with books and photographs and handed me a thick envelope. "Emily," she said, her voice soft but firm, "I want you to take care of things when I'm gone. You're the one I trust." I remember feeling a mixture of pride and anxiety. I was 29, living in my small apartment in Chicago, juggling my career as a marketing coordinator, and she trusted me with her entire estate. I had promised her I would. I never imagined that promise would turn me into an outsider in my own family. The funeral was on a crisp November morning. The air was sharp, and the sky was a muted gray. I stood in the chapel beside my parents, my Uncle James, my Aunt Karen, and my cousins, feeling the weight of grief pressing down on all of us. People came and went, offering condolences, sharing memories, and I held my own grief quietly, knowing I had responsibilities to handle afterward. After the service, we returned to Grandma Ruth's house. That's when everything started to unravel. My parents, who I had always considered my allies, suddenly turned cold. My uncle and aunt exchanged glances that made my stomach churn. I didn't know what was happening at first. I thought maybe the grief was making everyone irritable, but then the words hit me like a punch. "Emily," my mother said, her voice tight, almost rehearsed, "we don't think you need to be involved in all of this. It's too much for you. Maybe you should go home." I blinked, not quite understanding. "What do you mean? I'm the executor. Grandma trusted me with this." "That's just paperwork," my father said, his tone final. "You don't need to be here for the family's decisions. We'll take care of things." I felt the blood drain from my face. You're asking me to leave?" "Yes," my aunt added, her lips pressed in a thin line. "It's just easier this way." I couldn't speak. The room seemed to tilt, the walls closing in. I had spent months learning about her accounts, her legal documents, her personal wishes. I had stayed up late making sure everything was in order so that my family wouldn't have to deal with stress on top of grief. And now they were telling me I wasn't welcome? I felt my heart shatter into pieces. I packed a small bag that evening. My parents avoided looking at me, and my uncle and aunt made small, polite gestures that barely covered their disdain. My cousins whispered behind my back, probably thinking I didn't notice. And as I walked out of that house, the house that had been my grandmother's sanctuary, I felt something I'd never felt before. Complete and utter rejection. At home, I pulled out the envelope Grandma Ruth had given me. I sat at my kitchen table, the city lights glinting through the window, and opened it. Inside were her final wishes, her will, and detailed instructions about her finances, her home, and her personal belongings. There were also letters addressed to each family member, explaining her intentions and expressing her love. And in that moment, I realized something important. Even if my family turned their backs on me, Grandma hadn't. She had trusted me completely, and I would honor that trust, no matter what. The following days were exhausting. I contacted her lawyer, the banks, and her financial advisors. I made copies of every document, meticulously organized her accounts, and created a timeline for handling everything. Every phone call and email reminded me that I was now alone in this, carrying responsibilities that were both a gift and a burden. I couldn't let Grandma's legacy slip through my fingers, even if it meant standing alone against the people I once thought of as my family. Sometimes I sat in her living room, running my hands over the furniture she had chosen with such care, looking at photographs of her smiling face. I thought about the conversations we'd had, the lessons she'd taught me about kindness, resilience, and integrity. And I promised myself that I wouldn't let anger or resentment rule me, even though part of me wanted to scream at my parents for the cruelty of their words. I started documenting everything, every interaction, every phone call, every meeting. I knew that being the executor wasn't just about distributing assets. It was about protecting Grandma's wishes from being twisted or ignored. And though it pained me deeply to realize that my own family might try to interfere, I also knew that I had the law on my side. The realization gave me a strange sense of empowerment. I wasn't just Emily the daughter, the niece, the granddaughter. I was Emily the executor. And that meant something. I began sorting through her belongings. Some items were simple. Her collection of vintage teacups, her beloved knitting supplies. But others were more complicated, tied up in memories and emotions. Every photograph I touched, every letter I read, made the loss feel more acute, yet also strengthened my resolve. I would honor her fully, even if it meant standing alone. At night, I often felt a pang of loneliness that was almost physical. My parents didn't call. My cousins avoided me. Even my closest friends seemed hesitant to get involved. But I reminded myself that grief affects people differently. Just because they were turning away didn't mean I was wrong or unworthy. Grandma had seen my strength, and that was enough to keep me going. Then came the moment I had dreaded. I received a call from my Aunt Karen, who had been quietly handling some of the house logistics. She asked me if I could sign some paperwork. I realized quickly that they were trying to push me aside without directly confronting me. I explained calmly that I had the legal authority as the executor and that any changes required my involvement. She hesitated, then ended the call abruptly. I felt a surge of frustration, but also clarity. I could no longer rely on them. They had made their choice. And that's when I made a decision. I would do everything in my power to honor Grandma's wishes exactly as she had intended, without compromise. I began scheduling meetings with attorneys to ensure that every legal requirement was met. I created spreadsheets, lists, and binders detailing her estate. Every action I took was meticulous, careful, and deliberate. I wasn't just following instructions. I was safeguarding a lifetime of love and effort. Sometimes late at night, I allowed myself to cry. I mourned not just for Grandma, but for the family I had lost, or perhaps never truly had. The betrayal cut deep, but I knew that Grandma's trust in me was stronger than any hurtful words or actions from others. She had believed in me, and that belief became my anchor. The following weeks were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and paperwork. I quickly learned that being an executor was far more complicated than I had imagined. There were accounts to access, bills to pay, tax forms to file, and decisions to make about property that had been in our family for generations. Each day brought a new challenge, a new obstacle that tested not only my patience, but my resolve. I often felt like I was drowning in responsibility, yet I couldn't allow myself to falter. Grandma Ruth had trusted me, and I would not let her down. I remember the first confrontation with my Uncle James vividly. He stormed into my apartment one evening, papers in hand, his face flushed with anger. "Emily, this isn't how Grandma would have wanted it," he shouted, slamming the envelope onto my kitchen counter. "You can't just decide everything on your own. This is a family matter." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to remain calm. "Uncle James, Grandma named me as the executor in her will. That gives me the legal authority to handle these matters. I'm not deciding things arbitrarily. I'm following her instructions to the letter." He scoffed, shaking his head. "You don't understand. We should all have a say. You're too young, too inexperienced." His words stung, but I refused to let them intimidate me. "Age doesn't determine capability," I said firmly. "Responsibility does, and right now, the responsibility rests with me. If you want to challenge anything, we can do it legally, but until then, I need you to respect Grandma's wishes." That confrontation was only the beginning. Over the next several days, emails arrived from my cousins, expressing thinly veiled complaints. "We're concerned about some of the decisions being made regarding Grandma's estate," they wrote. "We just want to make sure her wishes are honored properly." I read each message carefully, making notes and documenting every interaction. My parents, too, kept their distance, occasionally sending curt texts that seemed designed to guilt me into stepping aside. Through it all, I leaned on Grandma's guidance. Her voice, or rather her words in those letters and journals, became my compass. She had anticipated family disagreements, even among people who loved her, and had laid out clear instructions to prevent disputes. It was almost as if she had foreseen the chaos that would follow her passing. One particularly stressful day, I had to meet with her financial advisor, a stern woman named Linda, to review Grandma's investment accounts. I was exhausted, my eyes red from sleepless nights, but I knew this was crucial. Linda looked at me over her glasses and said, "You're handling this remarkably well, Emily. Most people your age wouldn't have the discipline or patience." Her words warmed me more than I expected. In that moment, I realized that, despite the family turning away, I was not alone in my responsibility. There were people who respected my dedication and competence. But it wasn't just about paperwork. Handling Grandma's estate forced me to confront painful family dynamics I had never fully acknowledged. There were long-standing grudges, subtle manipulations, and moments of passive-aggressive hostility that I had ignored or rationalized before. Now I saw them for what they were. My parents' coldness, my uncle's controlling behavior, my cousin's jealousy, they were patterns I could no longer ignore. And acknowledging this was both painful and liberating. I began to take small steps toward reclaiming my autonomy. I set clear boundaries with my family. I would communicate only in writing when it came to estate matters. I would document every request, and I would respond only to legitimate legal concerns. It was a shift that felt empowering. For the first time, I wasn't just a daughter or a niece. I was a guardian of my grandmother's legacy. And that responsibility demanded courage and clarity. One evening, as I sat in Grandma Ruth's living room, reviewing a list of her personal belongings to be distributed, I came across a photo of her holding me as a child. She was smiling, her eyes twinkling with warmth. I ran my fingers over the frame and whispered, "I'll do right by you, Grandma. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, I won't let you down." And then, as if the universe wanted to test me further, a new challenge arose. My Aunt Karen had contacted a lawyer, questioning my authority as executor. The lawyer sent an official notice requesting a meeting to discuss the estate. My heart raced when I saw the email. I knew this could escalate into a full-blown legal dispute. I spent hours preparing, reviewing every document, making sure that Grandma's wishes were crystal clear and that I had an airtight record of my actions. The day of the meeting, I walked into the law office with a folder packed with evidence. My aunt and her lawyer were already there, looking confident and determined. I felt a flicker of anxiety, but pushed it aside. I presented every document meticulously, explaining each decision I had made in line with Grandma's wishes. I answered questions calmly, without defensiveness, sticking strictly to facts. By the end of the meeting, the lawyer representing my aunt had little to challenge. I could see the frustration in their faces as they realized that Grandma's estate was being handled exactly as she intended. It was a victory, yes, but it also marked a turning point for me. I realized that my family's attempts to undermine me had only strengthened my resolve. I had been tested, and I had risen to the occasion. In the following weeks, I continued to finalize the estate. I coordinated the sale of certain properties, distributed heirlooms according to Grandma's letters, and ensured that charitable donations she had specified were completed. Each completed task felt like a small victory, a testament to my determination and diligence. Amid all the chaos, I also began to heal emotionally. The sense of betrayal I had felt initially didn't vanish overnight, but it transformed into something else: understanding and acceptance. My family's actions reflected their own limitations, insecurities, and inability to deal with grief. It had nothing to do with my worth. And slowly I began to find peace in knowing that I had honored Grandma completely. By the time the estate was fully settled, months had passed. I stood in Grandma Ruth's living room one last time, looking around at the home that had been her sanctuary. I felt a mixture of sadness, relief, and pride. I had navigated the storm, faced betrayal, upheld the law, and, most importantly, fulfilled my grandmother's wishes with integrity. Sitting there, I realized something profound. Family is not always defined by blood. Family is sometimes defined by who stands by you when everything else falls apart, by who trusts you, and by what you do with that trust. I had lost the illusion of a united family, but I had gained a deeper understanding of myself. I was stronger than I had ever imagined. I was capable, resilient, and unwavering. And that, more than anything, was Grandma's true gift to me. Even now, months later, I think about that weekend, the moment I was asked to leave, and the pain that followed. It still hurts, yes, but it no longer defines me. What defines me is the strength I discovered, the responsibility I embraced, and the love I honored. Grandma Ruth's legacy lives on, not just in her possessions or letters, but in me. And I will carry it forward with pride, courage, and an unwavering sense of purpose. I am Emily Parker, and I am the executor of Grandma Ruth's estate. But more than that, I am the keeper of her trust, the guardian of her wishes, and the proof that even when the world turns its back, we can rise stronger than ever.